Imagine looking in the mirror one night and realizing your face is glowing in the dark. At first, you'd probably think it was kind of cool. But what if I told you that glow meant you were already dying, and you didn't even know it? Sounds unbelievable, right? Except this actually happened. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this became one of the most disturbing workplace disasters in American history. If you've never heard of the Radium Girls before, you're about to discover one of the darkest chapters in American history. In the early 1900s, thousands of young women landed what everyone called the perfect job. The pay was great, the work was clean, people respected it. Parents were proud when their daughters got hired. It looked like a dream come true. But imagine trusting your employer every single day, only to discover they were slowly poisoning you. Every day, these young women painted tiny watch dials with paint that glowed in the dark. The ingredient that made it glow? Radium. Back then, radium wasn't seen as dangerous. People believed it was a miracle. You could brush your teeth with it, rub it on your face, drink it with water. Some products even encouraged people to consume radium because they believed it could make them healthier, younger, and full of energy. Looking back, it sounds unbelievable. But at the time, millions of people genuinely believed radium was a miracle. So when these factory workers noticed their hands glowing after work, they smiled. When their dresses sparkled in the dark, they thought it looked beautiful. Some even painted their fingernails with the glowing paint before going out at night. Others brushed it onto their teeth just to make their smiles glow on the dance floor. It felt harmless, it looked magical, but every smile, every brushstroke, every single shift, they were swallowing tiny amounts of radioactive poison, and once it entered their bodies, there was no way to get it out. Then the nightmares began. Healthy young women started losing their teeth. Their jaws literally began falling apart. Their bones became so fragile, they broke without warning. Some suffered so much that doctors couldn't explain what was happening. And the most chilling part, years after they died, their bodies were still radioactive. If you think that's the most horrifying part of this story, it isn't. Because the real horror wasn't the radiation. It was what the companies chose to do after discovering the truth. Instead of warning their workers, they covered it up. They lied. They blamed the victims. And what happened next sparked a legal battle that changed America forever and exposed one of the most ruthless corporate cover-ups in history. Stay with me, because what these companies did next would force America to change the way it protected workers forever. Let's go back to where it all began, to the moment the world was searching for new technology and medical breakthroughs, radium looked like the answer to everything. People didn't see danger. They saw hope. The more people discovered about radium, the more they in the darkness felt almost impossible. It felt like magic, and companies knew exactly how powerful that feeling was. They turned radium into a symbol of modern life, a symbol of health, a symbol of in the dark. People loved the idea. It felt futuristic. It felt revolutionary. Nobody imagined that the same glow that made these watches special could eventually become the reason so many lives were destroyed. And as the demand for glowing watches exploded, factories needed thousands of workers to paint those tiny numbers by hand. That is where a generation of young women stepped into what looked like an incredible opportunity. A job that promised independence, a job that promised good money, a job that seemed like a dream. But behind that glowing paint was a danger no one warned them about. And soon the women who created the glow would become the ones destroyed by it. In the 1920s, finding a good job wasn't always easy. For many young women, especially those looking for independence, opportunities were limited. A stable job with good pay could change everything. And then came an opportunity that seemed almost too good to be true. Painting watch dials with glowing radium paint. The factories behind these watches were hiring thousands of young women, and to many of them, it looked like the perfect opportunity. The work was indoors. The environment seemed clean. The pay was better than many other jobs available at the time. For some women, it was the first time they had earned their own money, the first time they felt truly independent. They weren't just workers. They were building a life for themselves. They were helping their families. They were becoming part of a modern world that was changing faster than ever. And the companies made sure the job looked safe. The factories were bright. The workers wore nice clothes. The painting process seemed simple, just a small brush, a little glowing paint, and tiny numbers that needed to be filled in perfectly. What could possibly go wrong? To the young women entering these factories, it didn't look like a dangerous place. It looked like a place full of opportunity. Some even considered themselves lucky to be there. They worked alongside friends. They laughed together. They shared stories during their shifts. The glowing paint even became part of the fun. When the workers walked home after a long day, their clothes and hair sometimes carried a faint glow from the radium paint. They were sometimes called the Ghost Girls because they seemed to glow in the darkness. But they had no idea that the thing making them glow was also slowly harming them. And the most disturbing part, the truth was even more disturbing. Some companies had already started seeing warning signs, but instead of protecting their workers, they kept the machines running, because every glowing watch that left the factory meant more money. They thought they had found the job of a lifetime. They didn't know they had stepped into one of the deadliest workplaces in American history. Inside the factories, the job looked simple. The workers sat at long tables with tiny brushes in their hands. In front of them were hundreds of small watch dials waiting to be painted. Their mission was simple: fill in the numbers, make them glow, move on to the next one. But painting those tiny numbers required incredible precision. The numbers were so small that workers needed their brushes to have a sharp, fine tip, and that created a problem. The paint would quickly make the brush hairs spread apart. So the workers were taught a strange technique to fix it. They called it lip dip paint. They would place the brush between their lips to create a perfect point, dip it into the radium paint. and carefully paint the watch dial. Then they would repeat the process. Hundreds of times, thousands of times, every single day. To the workers, it was just part of the job, a small trick that helped them work faster. Some even joked about the glowing paint. They would paint their clothes, they would decorate their nails, they would make their teeth shine when they smiled. The glow became a symbol of the modern world they were helping create. But what they didn't know was that every time the brush touched their lips, tiny particles of radium entered their bodies. And unlike ordinary paint, radium didn't simply pass through. Their bodies treated it like something harmless. And once inside, it began attacking them from within. The women had no reason to believe they were in danger. After all, their bosses told them the paint was safe, their co-workers were doing the same thing, and the entire world was celebrating radium as a miracle. Why would they question it? But behind those factory walls, something terrifying was happening. The same substance that made the watches shine was slowly turning the workers into victims. But the most horrifying part wasn't what the workers didn't know. It was what the people in charge already knew. At first, the glowing paint felt like a miracle. Soon, it became something much darker, and the workers began treating the glow like a game, without knowing the danger they were playing with. At first, the strange light was something exciting, something unusual, something that made the workers feel like they were part of the future. After spending hours surrounded by radium paint, the women noticed something strange. The paint didn't just stay on the watch dials, it followed them home. Their hands would sparkle, their clothes would shine. Their hair would sometimes carry a faint radioactive sparkle. And instead of being afraid, they were fascinated. Why wouldn't they be? Everyone around them was saying the same thing. Radium was safe. Radium was amazing. Radium was the future. So the workers turned the mysterious shine into something fun. They painted their nails with it. They put it on their faces. Some even painted their teeth before going out at night. Imagine walking into a dance hall. The lights go down, and your smile starts shining. To these young women, it felt like something from a science fiction movie. It was a little piece of the future they could carry with them. They laughed about it, they showed their friends. They became known for their unusual appearance, but what seemed like a harmless trick was hiding a terrifying reality. Every time they touched the paint, every time they breathed in the dust, every time they put the brush between their lips, they were bringing more radium into their bodies. And the most tragic part, they weren't being reckless. They weren't ignoring warnings. They were doing exactly what they were told to do. Their employers encouraged the process. Their supervisors watched it happen. The world around them told them there was nothing to fear. They were young. They were hopeful. They were simply trying to do a good job. But slowly, something inside their bodies was changing. The same paint that made them feel special was becoming the thing that would destroy them. And before long, the women who once showed off their glowing smiles started noticing something was terribly wrong, but by then, it was already too late. They never imagined the danger was coming from the very thing that made them shine. How could they? The women were young, they were healthy, they were simply going to work every day just like they always had. But slowly, small warning signs began appearing. It started with things that seemed ordinary. A toothache, a little pain in the jaw, a feeling of weakness that wouldn't go away. Most people would have ignored these symptoms, and at first, the women did too, because they had no reason to believe their workplace was hurting them. But then, something terrifying started happening. Their teeth began to loosen. Some women had teeth removed, only for the wounds to never heal. Their jaws became painful. Their bones started becoming weaker. and doctors couldn't understand why. These were young women, many of them were in their 20s. They should have had healthy bodies and long lives ahead of them. Instead, they were experiencing illnesses that looked impossible. Some doctors blamed infections, others searched for different explanations. Nobody wanted to believe that a job they trusted, a company they depended on, could be the reason they were getting sick. Then the cases started adding up. One sick worker became several became dozens, and suddenly a terrifying question began to emerge. What if the glowing paint wasn't harmless after all? But while these women were searching for answers, the companies behind the radium watches were facing a different problem. They were not just dealing with sick workers. They were dealing with a dangerous truth. A truth that could destroy their reputation. And instead of warning the workers, they started protecting something else: their profits. As more women became sick, doctors were left with a terrifying mystery. These weren't elderly patients. They weren't people with long histories of illness. They were young women who had been healthy just months earlier. Women who went to work every day. Women who had families, dreams, and futures ahead of them. But now, their bodies were breaking down in ways doctors had rarely seen before. Some women went to doctors expecting a simple explanation. Instead, they heard words they never expected. Their bones were slowly disappearing. Some women suffered from severe jaw pain. Others experienced strange problems with their bones. In some cases, doctors discovered something shocking. Their bones were literally being destroyed from the inside. At first, many medical professionals struggled to find an explanation. The symptoms were unusual. The cause wasn't obvious. And because radium was still considered a miracle, many people were not ready to believe it could be responsible. After all, how could something that everyone celebrated as a breakthrough, something used in medicine, something people trusted, be the reason these women were dying? But slowly, evidence began pointing in one direction. The same substance that made the watch dials shine was building up inside their bodies. Radium had a terrifying ability. The body could mistake it for calcium, the mineral that helps build strong bones. So instead of leaving the body, radium settled into the bones and continued releasing radiation. A discovery that once seemed like the future was now revealing its darkest side. And as doctors started connecting the pieces, the truth became harder to ignore. The factory workers weren't suffering from a random illness. They were victims of something they were exposed to every single day. But there was still one question nobody could answer. Who knew the truth first? Because behind the scenes, the companies that created these glowing watches were beginning to face a problem. And they weren't just worried about the workers getting sick. They were worried about what would happen if the world found out why. As doctors searched for answers, a disturbing truth started coming to light. The radium companies were not completely unaware of the danger. In fact, there were signs that something was wrong long before the public found out. Scientists had already noticed that radiation could be harmful. Workers in other industries who handled radioactive materials were taking precautions. They wore protective equipment. They avoided unnecessary exposure. They knew radium was powerful. But inside the watch factories, the young women painting the dials were given none of that protection. They were told the paint was safe. They were encouraged to work faster. And they were never warned about what they were putting into their bodies every single day. The companies had a problem. If they admitted radium was dangerous, everything would change. Their products could lose their value. Their reputation could collapse. Their profits could disappear. So instead of protecting the workers, they protected the business. Reports were questioned. Warnings were ignored. And when women started getting sick, some companies looked for ways to avoid responsibility. They searched for explanations that pointed anywhere else. Anything that would keep the blame away from them. Imagine discovering that the place you trusted, the people who hired you, the people who told you everything was safe, may have known more than they admitted. For the Radium Girls, the illness was devastating, but the betrayal was even worse. They weren't just fighting a disease, they were fighting a powerful company that didn't want the truth to come out. And the battle ahead would reveal just how far some people were willing to go to protect their secrets. When the first Radium Girls became sick, the companies had a choice. They could warn their workers, admit the danger, take responsibility. Instead, they chose silence. Behind closed doors, executives searched for one thing, not a cure, but a way to escape blame. Medical reports were questioned, evidence was challenged, and when the truth became impossible to ignore, they blamed the women instead. The strategy was simple: create doubt, delay the truth, protect the company at any cost. While executives defended their reputations, the workers were losing everything: their health, their careers, their futures. Some were even told their illnesses had nothing to do with the job they loved. But the Radium Girls refused to disappear. They began asking questions, then demanding answers, and eventually they decided to fight back. Taking on a powerful corporation in the 1920s was almost impossible. The companies had money, lawyers, and influence. The women had none of those things. One of the first to stand up was Grace Fryer. Once healthy and full of promise, she watched radium destroy her body. Her teeth fell out, her jaw weakened. Yet finding a lawyer willing to challenge the company took years. Slowly, more women stepped forward. They shared their stories. What began as individual suffering became something much larger, a fight between ordinary workers and powerful corporations. Inside the courtroom, medical experts revealed the horrifying truth. Radium wasn't simply on their skin. Their bodies had mistaken it for calcium, locking radioactive material inside their bones, where it continued destroying them from within. The companies tried every delay they could. They hoped time would end the case before justice arrived, and for many of the women, it almost did. The Radium Girls won something history can never take away. They forced the world to see what had happened inside those factories. But for many of them, justice arrived too late. Years of pain couldn't be reversed. No settlement could restore the lives they had planned or the futures they had lost. Yet their fight changed something far greater than a single lawsuit. It reshaped workplace safety, corporate accountability, and the rights of workers across America. These women never wanted fame. They weren't trying to change history. They simply wanted to earn an honest living without being poisoned by the people they trusted. More than a century later, their story still shines, but not because of the glowing paint they once used. It endures because a handful of ordinary workers found the courage to stand against an entire industry and changed the world forever. For more stories like this, follow the channel.